Hello there, folks. This is Jay Frost speaking to you from, in fact, today, Baltimore, where I'm meeting with the folks at DonorSearch in one of their annual meetings. It's great to be here and to be here with you. Of course, this program is How to Raise, our weekly show that's a CFRE accredited show with leaders in the field of fundraising, teaching you how to do what they know how to do and in order to make your practice better and more successful. Today's show, of course, is Beyond the Ask, Cultivating a Fundraising Ecosystem with Aloha. It's sponsored, as always, by our friends at DonorSearch. We won't be talking about them a lot today unless our guest, who I'll introduce to you in a moment, chooses to mention them for some reason. But you can learn more about them and your donors, as well as everything about this series, the Philanthropy Mastermind series and our 3 shows, over on the DonorSearch site at donorsearch.net. And you'll see a link to that in the chat. Which is also a perfect way to introduce the chat itself. Throughout today's program, we're of course going to welcome you to participate in the conversation. And I really want to encourage you to warm that space up by saying hello to our guest presenter today. So please just go ahead and say howdy or aloha right there, and maybe which part of the country or the world you're from. Be especially nice if we see some folks from the islands here today, but wherever you're from, we'd love to know that, as well as maybe which organization you're with, maybe what you do, and use that space throughout today in order to, of course, have a conversation with one another, but also to ask questions. We do additionally have a Q&A. You'll see that usually at the bottom of your page. I want to encourage you to use both the chat and the Q&A throughout. We will make sure to share those questions and comments with our presenter. And I just want to take note of the fact that we do have folks like Joelle and Christy saying hello right there in the chat. So we really do appreciate your doing that. Thank you very much. And I hope the others here who are with us live will do that too. It's a great way to get to know one another. Of course, today we're also going to be recording the session, and that will be available to you afterwards, once again, at the DonorSearch site under the Resources tab, as well as on the DonorSearch YouTube channel. That'll be available to you in about 48 hours. And that will also be sent to you through a link in an email follow-up to this presentation, along with potentially the slides as well, but I'll have to ask the presenter about that. So be on the lookout for an email to come to you and follow up to this in about the next 48 hours. And that will have those links for you. Now, it's really a pleasure, of course, to welcome Jennifer Boyer, CFRE and MA, a friend to the sector, a personal friend, somebody who really does embody the spirit of Aloha, which she will be explaining to you what that means for real if you're not from the Hawaiian Islands. Jennifer brings nearly 20 years of fund development experience, driving strategy, execution, team building that has helped raise nearly $60 million for education, healthcare, and social services organizations across Hawaii. Her deep commitment to the nonprofit community is exemplified by her service on both national and local boards. She's been recognized as one of Hawaii Business Magazine's 20 for the Next 20, People to Watch, a Pacific Business News Woman Who Means Business, and a 40 Under 40 honoree. She's also a Patsy T. Mink Fellow and was the first to receive the Young Professional of the Year award from the Chamber of Commerce there. A proud Rotarian, she currently serves as a board member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals U.S. Foundation for Philanthropy, something which I support and you can too. It's again not the basis of today's presentation, but it's a really good cause, and it's great to see her leading that charge as well. In addition to her CFRE and CFRM designations, she's a certified master trainer with AFP, a Charitable Estate Planning Institute fellow, and holds certification in nonprofit board consulting. Now, I don't want to take up any more time introducing someone who you'll get to know right now, Jennifer Boyer. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Jay. And aloha, everyone, and thanks for joining in today. It's great to see some familiar names in the chat and see some friends. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and so that we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. My session title is called Beyond the Ask, Cultivating a Fundraising Ecosystem with Aloha. Now, as Jay mentioned, I am from Hawaii, and we say the word aloha often. Many of you here on the webinar may not be familiar with the word aloha. So I look forward to diving deeper into our topic to share um, about the full meaning of what the word aloha means, because there is definitely a connection between aloha and the work that we do as fundraisers. I saw LJ in the chat. So LJ, this is for you, this picture. My love or aloha for fundraising is really why I'm here today. I have been in the nonprofit profession for over 20 years, but I'm a professional fundraiser because it just brings me so much joy. And so I just wanted to share very quickly some of the things that bring me joy. My dog, Charlie Cooper, of course. Um, I am also a lifelong learner, and I'm a huge believer in professional development and that we should always be learning and growing. I have a passion to serve others, which is core to my work as a fundraising consultant. And of course, philanthropy brings me joy. And not only working with donors that and connecting their passion to the needs of the organizations that are meaningful to them, but also to support organizations that are near and dear to me with philanthropy. And I'll share a little bit more about that later. So, oops. What is aloha? Now, I mentioned earlier that there is a connection between aloha and the work we do as fundraisers. So, to understand this a bit more, I wanted to share what aloha actually means. And if you've been to Hawaii, you can put in the chat if you've been to Hawaii and the island, which island you visited. I'd love to see that. But if you've been to Hawaii, you may have received a lei or have seen a lei or have smelt a lei because some of them are very fragrant. But to receive a lei is such a gift because it takes so many fresh flowers to string them together, and it takes could take hours to make, and some of them are so intricate. So when you receive a lei, it's just really something special. And when you give it to others, it's usually, for a meaningful occasion, such as birthdays, graduations, um, even at memorial services, you'll see lei. But when you give a lei, we often say aloha. And aloha is really a word that has multiple meanings, actually. So it can mean hello or goodbye. Kind of reminds me of Lilo and Stitch and Moana. You hear the word aloha in those two movies a lot. So it can also mean love and the breath of life. This word is so meaningful to our culture and our islands that there's even a law in Hawaii called the Hawaii Law of the Aloha Spirit. And in it, it calls for us to live justly and ethically, to respect others, and reminds us that it should be really the essence of relationships in which each person is important to every other person for the collective existence. So, doesn't that remind you about fundraising and the work that we have the privilege of doing, right? So, Aloha is really the foundation on which I build my work with my clients, how we develop our fund development plans, and how we build meaningful relationships with others. And it's really the reason why this quote by Hank Rosso is so meaningful to me. Fundraising is a gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. Because when we have truly built and developed a fund development plan that stewards and cultivates meaningful relationships, one can't help but feel pure joy when making a gift, right? When I created an endowment at my alma mater, where I went to graduate school, and I made my first pledge payment. I told the VP of advancement, I never thought I would be so happy to write a $10,000 check. Um, but I knew it was because of the impact that this gift was going to make, and it was going to have on future students. And it just brought me so much joy. So um, remember this quote: fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. Now, let's get into what we'll cover today. So today I'm going to share with you three elements that I know are essential to building that ecosystem needed so that your donors feel joy and they experience what true aloha really is. Your ecosystem consists of your fundraising plan, your team, and your community. And I guess I should just note here too that I never advocate or agree with fundraising professionals when they say my donor. You often hear that in fundraising. A development director will say, well, my donor. So I just want to clarify that when I use the word like your team or your community, I really mean it in the sense that you as a fundraising leader should take ownership in this collective ecosystem. Okay. So also just some things to keep in mind today. You'll notice throughout the presentation that we're going to be stringing a lay together. You'll see the work that it takes to create a lay. Every step, the fundraising plan, building your team and your community, you'll see that it actually takes a really long time. I mean, sometimes hours, but once complete, when you have a full lay, it's just this really beautiful gift, right? So as we go through this, just keep in mind that fundraising is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And today we're going to be discussing private philanthropy. So nothing to do with government funding, just private philanthropy. And then finally, I just want to note that when it comes to fundraising, it should be a fundamental understanding that there is a values alignment between the donor and the organization. So these are not sales tactics or marketing tactics. We are working to develop meaningful relationships over the long term. Okay. And again, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. Now, in addition to the lay that we're going to be creating together, I am using the metaphor of a plane. And when I was growing up, there was an airline called Aloha Airlines. It's not in existence anymore, but this is really what the plane looked like. Isn't it beautiful? And in fundraising, you'll often hear people say, we're building the plane as we fly it, right? Well, I am a huge believer that it does not have to be that way. And if you develop these fundraising fundamentals, you will have a solid plane to fly that will get you from A to B. Okay, so let's start to build or string together our lay and start with our fund development plan. And in this section, this is like where I'll be spending a lot of the time because there's just so much information. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them. So I think you should always start with data. And I know Jay is a big data guy. Understanding the landscape of what is happening nationally really affects what happens locally, no matter where you are. So when we look at the state of philanthropy in 2024, because I'm primarily referring a lot of my data to Giving USA. And um, just so that we can get a high level understanding of what's happening. So here we see the state of philanthropy. Americans gave $557 billion in 2023. 67% of that came from individuals. Okay. I know that a lot of the boards that I work with, they're shocked when they hear that. Um, the Fundraising Effectiveness Project from the AFP shared latest data with us that donors have declined by 4.5%, but they were buoyed by major gifts by 6.3%. And then I love this one. Monthly recurring programs really sustained nonprofits in 2022 and 2023. We saw that really during COVID. And the average online donation is $326. I was shocked by that. I mean, I thought that that was really high. And then also from the National Philanthropic Trust, we see in their latest data that DAFs are increasing and that there are over 2 million funds across the US representing $230 billion in DAFs. So there's a lot of wealth and I think resources available to nonprofits, especially through your DAF donors. Now, one of my favorite charts to show clients and again to board members is this Giving USA chart. And you can all get excited because the 2025 report is going to be coming out soon. And I share this chart often because this data can provide guidance to you as you think about where you are currently spending your time and where you should be focusing your time, right? So think about where you're currently spending your time with your team and your fundraising um, activities, and then where you're actually or where you should be focusing your time. All too often, I know that organizations spend 60% of their time on special events and trying to secure sponsorships. If you focus that same amount of effort into building individual donor relationships, your ROI will be much greater. And so I share this to show that think about if you aren't currently focusing on building individual relationships, um, do so because this is where your funding is going to come from. And I will share a little bit in the fund development plan about how you can do that. So going back to the airplane metaphor and what it takes to build a plane, you want to think about the areas for design improvement. While all the parts of the plane are important, as fundraising professionals, we want to focus on the fuel and the body of their airplane. But when I coach clients on what the airplane, all of the components of an airplane, this is what it looks like. So the cockpit is really your case for support. The body is your team, which we'll be covering. The engine is your storytelling. And I'll kind of weave a little bit of storytelling in here, but storytelling is so huge when it comes to fundraising and sharing your mission. The wings of the airplane are your programs and services, and then the fuel is your fundraising. So again, we're going to be talking primarily about the body of the plane and then the fuel, which is your fundraising. So did you know that on a Boeing 757, there are 4 main fuel tanks? And why do you think that is? The primary reason is really to maximize range and capacity. And the same is true for fundraising. Okay. This is what I believe your fund development plan should look like. So if your plan does not include multiple fuel tanks, you will run out of fuel. When a nonprofit relies solely on a golf tournament and galas or on grants, they run out of fuel. And we are seeing a lot of that happening right now with the current administration. You know, nonprofits being affected because of government funding and grants not coming through. So when we experience staff burnout and donors dropping off, it's because we do not have a robust comprehensive development plan. So ensure that your development plan has a comprehensive approach with these 5 areas that allow your donors the opportunity to engage with you in different ways. So individual giving, direct mail, online and digital marketing, because earlier, you know, I had mentioned about the monthly giving donors, the average is $328 or $326. So ensure that you're including online and digital marketing, foundations and corporations, and then of course, special events too. But really your focus, I believe, should be on individual giving. So where can your organization start? You're wondering, okay, we don't have, or we don't do any of those things really well, or we only focus on grants. So how can I start to make incremental changes? So here are the 4 places that I think you should start. When you're crafting your fund development plan, these are the 4 areas that you want to focus on. The first one is think before you bank. And my mom used to tell me this all the time when I was growing up. Before I could take my, birthday money to the bank, or before if I received a dress for my birthday or, for Christmas, whatever gift I received, I could not use it until I sent a thank you note. And that's why I'm a huge advocate for handwritten thank you notes now, because it goes a long way. But it's so important. Stewardship, right? And cultivation and thanking our donors is so critical to the work that we're doing, and expressing our aloha and thanks for the gift that we received. So if you are not thanking your donors for the donations that they give you, then why are you even in this profession? I think, honestly. I mean, every gift, no matter the size, makes a difference. And you should be thanking your donors for each gift that they give to the organization. So if you're not doing that now, ensure that you're crafting a stewardship matrix for your organization so that at every level of gift, your donors are being thanked, or you're ensuring that your donors are getting a thank you note. I tell this story often that for my 41st birthday, I gave out 41 donations to 41 different organizations. And each gift was $250 because I knew that anything below that, the organization wasn't required to give me a tax receipt. But anything 250 and above, I was required. They were required to give a tax receipt. Well, so I sent out 41 donations, and guess how many uh, thank you notes or acknowledgments I got from those 41 gifts? I only got 13 acknowledgments, okay, or tax receipts from those out of those 41 organizations. And out of those 13, only 3 sent me handwritten thank you cards. So moving forward, 4 years have passed. I'm now 45. Guess which organizations I still continue to give to? It's those 3 that sent me handwritten thank you cards. So that's really important, I think. It's a great stewardship element that you can do that doesn't take a lot of time. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so the other thing that you can do, your organization can do now, is develop a monthly giving program, because I believe this is key to sustainability. And if you reach out to me after this session, I will send you a monthly giving template. So really, it's just kind of like a checklist that you can use to help you create your monthly giving program. But I truly believe that building a monthly giving program helps you to acquire new donors. It allows you to steward them appropriately. You can segment accordingly and really begin to build some great relationships with your monthly giving donors that may turn into legacy donors. So ensure that you are um, or that you can do a monthly giving program. Now, if you're currently burning your staff out by having a gala that yields very little return, consider having smaller, more intimate donor dinners. I just went to one and recently, and the organization raised over $70,000 with, I think there were like 24 or 25 people there. Having the right people around the table makes all the difference. And I can share a little story about that a little later. Finally, focus on your board of directors. I could do a whole session on working with your board, but for now, I will just say that you should be inviting them to help you build a culture of philanthropy through their time, talent, and treasure. Your fund development plan should be taking people through this donor engagement cycle. So, how are you providing them opportunities for people to learn about what you do and how you are engaging with them? This is what really you should be focusing on in your fund development plan, this donor engagement cycle. And they say it takes about 6 months to 2 years to build a meaningful relationship and take a donor through this donor engagement cycle, to where you're researching about them or doing some data analysis, and then you're learning a little bit more about them, you're engaging with the donor, you finally make the ask, they give a gift, and then you thank, and then you repeat that whole cycle all over again. So it takes a long time, 6 months to 2 years. It's a marathon, not a race. And I just wanted to share a quick example of an intimate donor dinner that I created for a client. And this was specifically to ask people to leave the organization in their estate and gift planning. And the host, you'll see her on the right in the red. She opened her home to about 30, I think there were about 30 individuals that night. And it was just a lovely evening filled with mission moments and targeted asks. That night, we had one DAF gift of $25,000. We had 3 bequest intention forms filled that evening, totaling over $1.2 million, and one endowment gift of $35,000. So it was a very fruitful night because this host invited the right people around the table who were already engaged with the organization. Okay, these weren't just new people. These were people that were and have been already engaged with the organization. So who you have around the table matters. And this only took 2 weeks to coordinate, not months and months of planning like how you would with a special event. So consider these smaller, more intimate events. I wanted to show you proven data. And like I said, I've been in fundraising for over 20 years, but the first time that I truly focused on creating a fund development plan back in 2009. Yikes. So 2009, I was at a small healthcare organization. And excuse me, we went from $11,500 in revenue to $335,000 in revenue over 4 years. And since then, I've taken the strategy to all three organizations that I worked for. And I know that when you integrate this comprehensive revenue stream of individual giving, online and digital marketing, direct mail, foundations and corporations, and special events, I know that your fundraising will increase. And so you see that here, this trend at every organization I've been to, we've started at a certain point and we've always raised increasingly more money. More importantly, when you stop focusing on numbers and focus on building relationships, stewarding and cultivating donors with Aloha, your fundraising revenue will increase because the goal of fund development is to acquire donors of time and money who will stay with the charity. The late Simone Joyo, she has this wonderful book that I have. And in it, she says, the goal of fund development is to acquire donors of time and money who will stay with the charity. This is done through the process of relationship building. With the donor at the center, fund development nurtures loyalty and lifetime value, which then leads to philanthropy. I love that. Okay, next, we're going to move into your team. And your team, the body of the airplane, right, represents your team. And your team is a critical part of your ecosystem. And when you can build trust with members of your team, you will start to see success. And just like on an airplane, you will have some people sitting up in the front in business class, others will be in economy plus, and then others will be in the back. But they are all still part of your flight. And over the years, right, as you're changing your fund development plan based on your data, people on the plane will be moving around. You know, your board members may not always be up in the front. They might be in the middle section, but people are going to be moving around on the airplane. But these groups of people, I believe, are essential to your success in building a fundraising program. So who do you want flying with you? Now, as you continue to build your lay or create your lay, think about all of the different groups that you interact with. Okay, whether you're an executive director or fundraising professional, director of development, think about all of the different groups that you interact with. As an executive director, I knew that I needed my development team. I needed my chief financial officer. I would say that that's probably one of the most important. Of course, my board of directors, our volunteers, and our donors. These 5 groups of people, I believe, are essential to having on the plane. They all play a critical role in success of the organization. And I knew that I needed to invest the time into building this ecosystem of support. So why do you need them? And I know that I really want to dig a little deeper into like building a better bridge between fundraising, the fundraising department and the finance department, because oftentimes there's conflict, right? But I learned that when I built a better relationship with my CFO, it made my life so much easier. So, why do you need these groups of individuals on your plane? Well, your development team is the bulk of your budget, right? So it only makes sense that you would invest time and resources into this area. Um, CFOs, they tense up when I say that you need to spend money to make money, but it's true. I mean, this is also why you need your CFO on the plane. Include them as much as possible in your budgeting process, in your fund development planning. Um, have them attend board meetings with you, or fund development committee meetings. Invite them to engage with your team so that they can actually see that you're not just going out to lunch, or coffee, or just having fun for the heck of it, or having a party. You are actually strategically moving these donor relationships through that donor engagement cycle. And oftentimes, if you don't include your finance department, in helping them understand the work that you do and building this culture of philanthropy, it makes your job so much more difficult. Finally, critical to your fundraising ecosystem is, I think, your board of directors. And to me, how you can utilize your board is, you can bounce your plan off of them, um, get them to give you feedback, ask for their advice. At the same time, teach them what the joy of giving actually means. Each board member should be taken through that donor engagement cycle so that they know what it feels like, to be stewarded and to be cultivated and feel that joy when they make that gift to your organization. Change in action requires a change in mindset and language. I will never forget one of my first board meetings as an executive director. And my chair, who was the CEO of a hospital, said, a change in action requires a change in mindset and language. And I don't think that he was the one that initially said this quote. Um, I don't know where it came from, but he shared it as a challenge to our board, really. And if we wanted our revenue to go from $11,500, we needed to change how we went about our work. And we needed to infuse Aloha into everything that we did. And that really started with building a culture of philanthropy. This is a board. This was my very first, as an executive director, my very first board that I worked with. And um, they were all leaders in the healthcare industry. And my board chair at the time, he was the one that said, we need to learn, right? Really what fundraising actually is. Because oftentimes we think of fundraising as begging, right? We treat it, or maybe board members, they, treat it like the dirty F word, when in reality, we know that fundraising is quite the opposite, right? So it's not about begging, it's not about having your hand out. It's really about teaching joy. So let's change our fundraising language. And I truly believe that this is why the board that I just showed you, why they were so successful. So change starts at the top. So start with your board of directors and teach them the language that they can use that evokes joy or aloha. You can teach them through meetings. I used to meet with my board chair every Friday for breakfast. Um, and we built a meaningful relationship, but he could hear the language that I was using, right? When I talked about fundraising and I talked about philanthropy. Teach your board members by bringing them on a visit with you so that they can hear how you visit with donors and how you interact with them. Show them how you build meaningful relationships with your donors. Show them that you do not have to make an ask on the first visit. And more importantly, you probably shouldn't be making an ask on the first visit. But teach your board members how to do it and what that joy looks like. Invest in your team and show them what Aloha really looks like. What do you folks think about that? Changing the language of fundraising. Okay, finally, excuse me, we'll get into your community. This is the third element to your fundraising ecosystem, and I'll wrap up with this. We have been discussing the whole time about the foundation um, of what our work is. It's about building relationships. Strong relationships build strong organizations, and strong organizations build strong communities. So again, as you think about your donors and your constituent groups, think through how you are going to be moving your community through this donor engagement cycle. Okay, so when you think about your individual donors, when you're thinking about your board members, when you think about your monthly giving donors or your first-time donors, think about how you're going to be moving them through this donor engagement cycle. So how do you build community? Okay. You can educate, you give them the tools for success, and you give them a story to tell. That is how you build community. One of the my most favorite story that I love to tell is when I was at the Salvation Army. And this was in 2018 during the Puna lava disaster. And, uh, you know, we wanted to show our donors and our corporate partners really the work of the Salvation, what the Salvation Army was doing in Puna. And I had one particular corporation that had been giving a six-figure gift every year, and then it stopped. And for 2 years, I noticed that they hadn't made a gift. So I finally called the foundation chair and I had a conversation with her and I said, hey, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about, is there anything that we can share with you? What was the reason? Is there a reason why you stopped giving and supporting us? And she said, Jennifer, just because you're in the Salvation Army doesn't mean that we're going to automatically give you a gift every year. She said, we never hear from you folks. We don't know what you do. And that one shocked me, but also I thought, gosh, that's true. I mean, maybe we only reached out to them when we needed money, right? So our team, our development team, got this group together. It was a group of corporate partners, major donors, and our top volunteers. And we flew them from Oahu to Hawaii Island on like a day trip. And we took them around the lava disaster site. We had them talk to small business owners that were affected by the lava, so that they could see and understand the work that the Salvation Army was doing. And this was so important because one, it helped to build community just within the group that was there, but it gave each person there a story to tell. And they walked away thinking, wow, you know, it's amazing the work that they're doing. And also I was able to support um, the work of the Army through feeding the people that were affected by the disaster, or they could hear firsthand stories. So when you think about donor experiences for your organization, think about stories that your donors can tell, because I guarantee you, if they have one experience, that's the story that they're going to be telling for years and years to come. Okay, because it made such an impact on them. So create mission moments. That's how you build your community. Here's another story, quick story. This is Dr. Loretta Chin, and I love sharing this because during COVID, one of my clients, each board member was asked to make a large gift to the theater to keep it open. Okay, all theaters, all arts and culture organizations pretty much went dark, but they didn't want to let go of their staff, right? And so the theater asked each board member to step up and make a large gift. Dr. Chen came up to me and she said, I don't necessarily have the capacity to make a large gift like this. And each board member was asked to make a $25,000 gift. She said, I don't have the capacity to do that. Can you help me think of a way that I can raise that money? And so we created an online fundraising page for her. And Dr. Chen, she is well known in Singapore. And she has built a really great following here locally, but also internationally. And so when she created this fundraising page, she sent it out to her network, her social network, and in about a week, she raised way over $25,000, the required amount that each board member was asked to give. So utilize your board members and their gifts and their talents to help you build this community. She used her community to raise money for an organization that is meaningful to her. So think about creative ways that you can help your donors or help your board members um, raise funds for you. Um, this is great. Habitat for Humanity, they do a really awesome job in getting people involved by doing hands-on, giving people a story to tell that they had a hand in building a home for a family that needs it. And then here is a personal example of how the Alzheimer's Association here in Hawaii, they do such a phenomenal job in um, cultivating relationships, truly. But so my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in November of 2023. And since then, it's been a slow decline. But one of the things that you should be doing with Alzheimer's patients is giving them hands-on activities. And so the Alzheimer's Association had an event and they did printmaking. And it was so meaningful and wonderful to see my mom being able to do this activity. And she just had so much fun. But again, think about your organization and your community and how you can get each of your community members involved and take them through that donor engagement cycle. When you can build your ecosystem, incorporating your fund development plan, your team, your community, you will have created a beautiful gift, this lei, not only for your organization for years to come, but more importantly, for the donors that support you with their philanthropy, and you are allowing them to give with Aloha. So Hopefully, you will walk away with some nuggets of information today about how to build your fund development plan, how to create your team and the people that you need on board, and then also ideas or inspiration of ways that you can build your community. Feel free to connect with me via email. You can email me, don't forget, for the monthly giving template. And then Jay, I will share, happy to share my slides with you all.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jennifer. We'll make sure to then include them in a follow-up email. So I know of a number of you have asked about that. And just once again, you'll get an email coming to you with a link to the recording, excuse me, as well as to the slide deck. And do take down Jennifer's contact information now. And Jack, if you put that in the chat as well, we'd appreciate that, because we'd love for you to come back on camera, Jennifer, in case people have questions. And I want to give people a chance to ask those questions now. And while they're gearing up anything that they may have in mind, I want to let folks know about what we have coming up next. So coming up this weekend, someone who I'm sure you know, Jennifer, Martha Schumacher, who is the past AFP Global Chair, is in the podcast, the PM podcast. And that'll be a really wide-ranging conversation on leadership and legacy. It's a really wonderful conversation with her about the road she's taken. That drops, again, tomorrow night. That's the PM podcast, wherever you like to listen, or you can catch that over on the DonorSearch YouTube channel. And then on Tuesday of next week, we have Frontlines of Social Good. That's our news show. So if you haven't sat in on that, we hope you'll join us for that. I know for a fact that we have Jeff Rum, author of 6 Steps for Impact Report Success, on that show, and we'll have others as well talking about topical issues, as well as our top 5 gifts of the week. And then on Thursday next week, this show, How to Raise, it's a session called Asking Styles 101, Build Relationships Through Your Key Strengths, featuring Brian Saber of Asking Matters. So you can check out all that, of course, on the DonorSearch website under the resources tab, or by signing up for the list. And you'll get information on that, of course, coming to you every single week. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions here in the queue. I don't see any right now, but I know you've answered plenty in terms of what you've shared. So thank you so much, Jennifer. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I should say mahalo. That's right. So thank you, Lee, for that. I appreciate that. Jennifer, as you think about all this, kind of in summary, if people had one takeaway, one thing they should do, what would that be?
I know this sounds like a lot, but I would say the one takeaway is, as a consultant, I come across so many organizations that don't have a plan. They just continue to do the same thing over and over. And so I would say, one, look at your data, because data tells you so many things about donor giving habits, where they like to give, all of that. Look at your data. And that's one of the things I learned from you, Jay, so that you can put together a fund development plan that makes sense and will help you increase revenue year over year.
If only everybody had a plan. I guess once you have one, you can always revise it. But this is
exactly.
You keep running into this, though, don't you?
All the time. It shocks me to see how organizations that have been operating for years, but flat, don't have a plan. So once we start to implement certain things throughout the year, like a monthly giving program or an estate and gift planning program, they see their numbers increase. So it's small incremental changes that they can make throughout the year.
You started this presentation also talking about those big grants and people putting all their eggs in that basket, that or special events. And again, that's something else we see a lot. It was just something we discussed today at the DonorSearch meetings, just as a way of discussing the environmental organizations, which have been hit as arts organizations have, and others. And I wonder, are you seeing a greater need for this kind of planning now as a result of some of these changes than we've had before?
Absolutely. And, I think I see, like, for those, especially after COVID, right? Um, I mentioned that the organizations that had monthly giving programs during COVID were um, they thrived during COVID. And so we continue to build on that post-COVID. And now they have a huge number of donors that are giving monthly giving gifts that the director of development has been able to cultivate those meaningful relationships with those monthly giving donors during COVID into major gifts. And I think same is true with, special events and things like that. If you have a plan now, even though you may be suffering with that current administration, if you start to have a plan now, you will be sustainable no matter what happens, no matter what administration comes in, no matter what pandemic you go through. Your organization will be able to sustain itself because you have these fundamental fundraising practices in place.
And just to thread that needle, you also talked a lot about stewardship and those thank you letters, whatever form they take, but just personalization of gratitude. And once again, do you think that that is more important now than ever in order to sustain those donors?
100%. And, I hear from nonprofit executive directors all the time where I encourage them, just take 5 minutes of your day after you go through your emails, take 5 minutes a day to write one or two thank you notes. You know, you don't have to do hundreds, just carve out some time to do it. And I heard one story recently from an animal shelter, and I encouraged her. We went through her donor list, and I said, okay, take 3 names and then write them thank you notes for their gifts of $5,000 or more. So she sent out the thank you notes, and then 1 week later, she got another check from that same donor. And in the note, it said, I have never received a handwritten thank you note, and I was just so grateful for it. And the executive director was shocked. She was like, I can't believe that it's just these little connections that you can make that doesn't cost a lot, that makes a huge impact on donors.
I have to just say as we close up here, because Jack is our producer, and when he was quite small, he's also my son. When he was quite small, we went to a performance at some kind of local opera company in Virginia, and there were envelopes, sort of like you might see at a church. If you go to a church, that you could make a contribution to, and those were placed on the chairs at the performance. And so he took the envelope and asked for $1 and put it in the envelope and scrawled something on it. And we didn't think anything of it. We had bought our tickets and we weren't really involved with the organization. Well, we received a personalized note with a personal postscript within the space of a week, thanking us for that generous contribution of $1 from our son. It's something that you don't easily forget. So
Yes.
I'm with you 100%. Thank you so much for this, Jennifer. Really appreciate you as always. I know I appreciate everybody who was here. Make sure you follow Jennifer's work in general and look for that email. And then also do fill out the survey. We pay attention to what you have to say, and we really care about what you want to see and hear in the weeks ahead. So until next time, thanks so much. Take care. Thank you, Jennifer.